What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Trapped in the US podcast, where we connect the dots between current headline news and biblical prophecy. This is your host, KB. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I want to apologize right up front. It's been a little while since I've been able to upload a podcast, and there's been some health issues, there's been some scheduling issues, and some other personal things that I've been having to work around. And I sincerely apologize to those of you who have been following my podcast. I'm coming back stronger than ever. I've been spending a lot of time in prayer, just seeking God about how to do my podcast better, do it more frequent, and to make sure you guys are getting all the information that you need to be aware and to prepare for the times that are coming. So I really appreciate you guys' patience with me. Before I break into the headlines here, I want to continue to ask you guys to support the podcast by subscribing to our Patreon at patreon.com/trapped in the US podcast. Guys, this really helps if you guys would support us. I think there's a $5 and a $10 a month option there, just to help with the channel, just to help with equipment, and the monthly costs and fees it takes for me to do this podcast. I really could use you guys' support, so thank you in advance for that. And if you have any questions or suggestions or any news clippings or anything you want to throw my way, go ahead and email askkb@trappedintheus.com. All right, guys, this is going to be a big one. I'm going to try to breeze through these, but also give some insight and speculation on what I see happening, and give you all some prophecies here at the end to connect everything. So, right off the bank, here we go. June 18th, NATO warns we're on the brink of nuclear World War III. NATO today warned the world is on the brink of a nuclear World War III and announced it has taken nuclear weapons out of storage in Europe to confront Russia in Ukraine. NATO indicated it has put an undisclosed number of nuclear warheads on standby amid escalating tensions. As Russian President Vladimir Putin undertakes a rare North Korean state visit this week, marking a likelihood of significant escalations in the Ukrainian war, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said bluntly, I won't go into details about how many nuclear warheads should be operational, but we need to consult on these issues. And that's exactly what we're doing. So they're opening up the storage units that carries the weapons of mass destruction, and they're pulling them out, guys. NATO is pulling them out. And we're talking about all the countries that has them at their disposal. They are pulling them out. You don't pull out nuclear weapons out of storage and prepare to use them unless you have the intent to do so. This is very, very concerning, guys. It's actually terrifying that these things are playing out before our eyes. Continuing on, war news: NATO nuclear weapon stockpiles open. Operational readiness of nuclear forces in Europe. Confirmation. War News 24/7. The die is cast for NATO. Activation of nuclear weapons. Guys, this is just confirmation. NATO activates its nuclear shield, fully confirming World War News 24/7 for the permanent vigilance from now on of the nuclear member countries of the Atlantic Alliance. The decision was made a long time ago as NATO fears either a strike on one of the supply bases in the Ukrainian ED or the use of tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Guys, and just continue a little further. France does not provide NATO with its nuclear arsenal because of a long-standing decision to remain independent on deterrence. Both camps now, NATO and Russia, have activated their nuclear forces. One mistake can lead to unforeseen situations. I'm going to tell you what the unforeseen situations are. The end of the world. Guys, all it takes is one of these mushroom clouds, okay? All it takes is one of these bombs to go off to change the whole world all over again. And it's not going to be like it did the last time because no one else had any to counteract America when we dropped them in World War II. Okay. Everyone is pulling them out of their stockpile. Everyone is arming themselves and they're trying to develop even more. Look here, NATO is in talks to develop more nuclear weapons by bringing them out of storage and into readiness in the face of a growing threat from Russia and China. So, guys, this is continuing to heat up. The big guns are being pulled out, and we're blissfully unaware over here in the West because everything's about Biden and Trump 24/7, every single day on the news. That's all we hear about. We got a little slippage because of Hurricane Burrow that came through. Little bit of news went that way. Other little news here and there about the weather or some sports, but 85-90% of this stuff is all about Biden and Trump. No one's telling the world, okay, that all our nuclear arsenals are being taken out of storage and being readied with our fingers on the button. Okay. And we're just blissfully unaware. Well, that's why you come to podcasts like trappedintheus.com because that's how we feel. Americans feel like we're trapped with literally a ticking time bomb waiting to explode on us, okay? Because all of Americans are being thrown into this predicament against our will and against our knowledge. All of you parents who cherish your children's futures, okay? Grab a hold of your children tight and hug them, okay? Kiss them and pray over their lives, okay? Because we might not wake up tomorrow. It's going to happen, and it could happen any day, and we need to be aware of it. Next article, FSB to Putin. NATO is training to hit us with nukes, and now they're threatening the very existence of the Russian state. We are approaching the point of no return. This is President Putin making this announcement. The head of the border service of the Russian Federal Security Service made a very disturbing revelation to the Sputnik agency, indicative of where the increasingly escalating Russia-Ukraine NATO war is heading. In a news story making the rounds in the Russian media, the Russian official confirmed that NATO forces are conducting nuclear strike simulation exercises within striking distance of Russian territory. They're practicing for the big guns, guys. They're practicing. NATO right now. We're practicing nuclear strike simulation exercises right now. And as you're going to see as well, Russia is too. We're practicing for the big game. We're practicing for the annihilation of the human race as we speak. NATO is training to strike Russian soil with nuclear weapons near its borders, said Vladimir Kulesov said. He added, near the Russian border, NATO's reconnaissance activities are increasing. The intensity of their operational combat training of the alliance troops is increasing, during which they are working out scenarios for conducting military operations against the Russian Federation, including the launch of nuclear attacks on our territory outside. He continued, urgent measures to be taken to protect and secure our borders. The situation requires. Next article. Russia has moved 11 nuclear submarines into the Atlantic Ocean. This was back in the end of May. So I'm going back a little bit, about a month and a half. I'm going to put all this together and connect the dots. But you already see right off the bat, guys, this is not some small tit for tat. This is not how it was in the beginning when this war began in Donetsk back in February of 2022. And America and NATO forces were politely staying out of the way, but just giving consulting advice, okay, to Ukrainian forces. The Ukraine has lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers now. They're losing the battle in Ukraine. They're losing ground in Ukraine every single day. And now we have NATO forces that are not only aligning and going into Ukraine and fighting, and also consulting. But we're also have hundreds of thousands of NATO troops lined up on the border of Poland and Belarus right now, lined up on the borders of Russia, and we have nuclear submarines from Russia going into the Atlantic Ocean, going into Cuba, as you're going to see here in a second, going into Nicaragua, um, positioning themselves for the big day. Who's going to take down who first? Guys, this is terrifying. This is extremely concerning, and I'm just trying to bring you the news. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to bring you the literal news that everybody is fighting to keep from your eyes, okay? Russia has deployed 11 nuclear submarines into the Atlantic Ocean. Each submarine carries from 6 to 16, in some cases, up to 32 missiles, each of which may hold 6 to 10 nuclear warheads. This deployment means that a cautious estimate proves there are now around 1,000 warheads on Russian submarines that can be headed toward the U.S. East Coast or perhaps the Gulf of Mexico. Guys, we've spoken in podcasts before, um, where Henry Groover and his prophetic revelations and visions that he's had, the Lord has shown him that literally Russian missiles were coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, and it appeared in his vision as if they were parked on the beach when they came off. Okay. Another prophetic word from Dmitry Duduman. We saw, he said there would be this, the country of America would be busy with internal problems. Then from the oceans, Russia, China, Nicaragua, Mexico, Cuba, Central America, and one or two other nations that he couldn't remember would strike America in 1 hour. It would be taken down. And we're seeing it. The play of this whole thing is being played out. And that prophecy was back in, I think, 1986 or 84. And we're seeing it right now. The article continues. This deployment comes just days after Ukraine attacked and either damaged or destroyed two separate Russian over the horizon nuclear missile warning radar stations in southern Russia. When these stations were hit, the lack of radar coverage put a hole in Russia's nuclear protection. When radars were operational, Russia would have been 14 to 16 minutes advanced warning that nuclear missiles were coming at their country. Now that those radars are destroyed, if a Russia submarine or if a submarine launched missile was fired from within the eastern Mediterranean Sea, almost anywhere in the Red Sea or the Gulf of Arabia or the south of the country of Somalia or on the African continent, Russia would only have 10 to 12 minutes of warning, likely even less. So NATO's are supposedly Ukraine, but NATO backed Ukraine took out two uh, over the horizon nuclear missile warning stations in southern Russia, just so they can't see, so they're blinded. This is the kind of steps that countries take before they launch all out war on a country. Okay. They're weaken their defenses and they pull out all the big guns like they're doing. You're seeing it, guys. You're seeing it right here. Next article. This was on June 12th last month. Russian warships dock in Cuba to give U.S. a dose of its own medicine. So some of you have already heard about this. This was slightly in the news, just kind of uh, glanced over before they jumped right back into the Biden Trump debacle that's going on right now. Okay. Um, but these warships, they entered into a Cuban port and they docked some of its northern fleet at the longtime Latin American enemy country of the United States. I think we can definitely see this as a direct Russian reply to the general U.S. declaration of conducting what it calls freedom of navigation exercises. So Cuba was one of the countries in Dmitry Duduman's prophecy, okay, where these strikes would come from. And here we are, Russian Submarines, Russian warships are docking in Cuba as we speak, guys. Next article, War News 24/7. In permanent combat formation off the coast of the U.S., Russian ships and the state of the art submarine Yasen M with supersonic Zircon caliber and Onyx. Here's the sub, guys, right here. Russian warships and at least one nuclear powered submarine, along with strategic bombers, are being deployed off the U.S. coast, according to U.S. officials. The Russian warships will head to Cuba and Venezuela, and after the exercises are completed, they will remain in the region until the end of the summer to conduct new exercises in the fall. That means, guys, these submarines are not just floating around, okay, swimming and not taking a nice little dip and going back home. They're being deployed into the countries that have been spoken of prophetically that will attack us in the day and the hour that it is allowed to happen. And I'm telling you right now, it's unfolding before our very eyes as we speak. It is noted, as the article continues, that Moscow did not warn Washington about these exercises, and this military development seems to have a permanent basis. The U.S. Navy is trying to determine whether Russian warships and submarines are carrying nuclear missiles or carrying special cargo for Cuba and Venezuela. Russia moves fleet and air force for military exercises due to growing U.S. support for Kiev. Russia is showing that it's still capable of a certain level of global power projection, say the same American sources. Next article, Russian ships conduct missile drills off the coast of Florida. Why are we having drills? Excuse me, why is Russia having drills off the coast of Florida? What are they practicing for? Guys, they're practicing for the real thing. And they're practicing right in the area where it's going to take place. Guys, this is continuing to prove the point that I have been whole purpose of creating this podcast. America, you have been declared and found wanting in the eyes of God, and you are not going to escape what is coming upon this nation. Every family is going to feel the effects of this. Every citizen is going to feel the effects as this nation is attacked by our enemies. And everyone is going, either if you survive the onslaught, if you survive, okay, all the bombs going off, everything else happening in America as this unfolds very shortly, you then have to fight off as all these countries, Russia and China, come into America and go house to house, trying to take their property that they're taking ownership of. So first, you got to survive nuclear World War III upon our country. Then you got to fight off their armies as they come and step foot onto our land. They're already on our land, coming through our border. Hundreds of thousands of them, hundreds of thousands of military-aged men from Russia, from China, from all our enemy countries are coming in through the border, and it has been allowed for years. And citizens just like myself and so many others, it's impossible to even say concerning is the right word, because I think you just feel you just feel like it's at this point you're trapped. What can you do but fall on your face and cry out to God for mercy? That's all you can do, and get your heart right with Him, and prepare your home for tough times. Prepare your family for tough times. Get your heart right with the Lord. So I continue here. Here's a picture I'm showing. If you guys are just listening to the audio, shows a picture of a submarine shooting a missile, several missiles off of the Florida coast. Next article, War News 24/7. Serbian President A. Vucic. We will have World War III in 3 to 4 months. We are checking what we have in oil, flour, and sugar. This statement just came last month. This was in June, okay, guys? And the under headline says, "What does the Serbian president know?" And it's a picture of him with Vladimir Putin, which obviously he's having meetings with this guy. So he knows some information. The president of the Republic of Serbia, Alexander Vucic, gave a long interview to the Swiss weekly magazine Weltwoche, during which he revealed that Serbia controls the reserves of oil, flour, and sugar, as in 3 or 4 months we will have a world war. Due to very good relations with the Serbian president with Putin in Moscow, it is possible that Vucic knows what's going on behind the scenes and that he has conveyed some Russian ultimatum to NATO, especially after the admission of the transfer of Ukrainian F-16s to NATO, one's bases in Romania and Poland. If you bet that someone is bluffing, it means that you don't have a better hand. You just think the other person has weaker cards. You are not sure about it because you do not know and have not seen its leaves. I am always very cautious when assessing Putin's wishes or potential future move. What further complicates the situation is that everyone is only talking about war. No one seeks peace. This is Vucic talking. Nobody is talking about peace. Peace is almost a forbidden word. It is very strange to me that no one is trying to stop the war. There is a different theory which I can understand, and I'm not saying I approve, that the West thinks that it can easily defeat Putin. They want to exhaust him in Ukraine, and then they will enter the space and Russia with its current territory, and it will no longer exist, and Putin will be overthrown. Maybe to the possible, but what do I say that we walk beside the brink of the abyss? Analyze the situation of NATO and the USA. They cannot afford to lose the Ukrainian war. Third, this will open a Pandora's box for more movements and hostilities against the collective West in the future. But take the other side. If Putin loses the war, he will personally lose everything. Second, he will not have the reputation of someone who created a common denominator of Ivan, Peter the Great, or Catherine the Great. And thirdly, Russia will not exist, nor will it have its present form. And then, when you have these two sides so far apart in terms of their wants and their expectations, then you see that everything is at stake. Everything. No one can afford to lose, Vucic says. When you have this situation, we are probably approaching a real disaster. And then we come to another question. Who's ready to lose 1, 2, 5, and 10 million people? Ask yourself. I am not ready to lose a single person, and we will not participate in it. But that is a question for others. I can't say World War III, but I don't know. We're far from that big. If we're far from that big conflict, no more than 3 or 4 months, and there's still a risk that it will happen even sooner. Unquote. Next article: War News 24/7. Russian analyst: nuclear drills are not a show. Russia is preparing to launch a tactical nuclear attack. All nuclear use mechanisms are being tested. Russia's ongoing nuclear weapons exercises, as the article continues. The second phase, which began this week, are not some kind of demonstration exercise, warns military analyst Igor Korotchenko, editor-in-chief of National Defense Magazine, speaking to Sputnik. The purpose of this exercise is to replicate the practical mechanics of the tactical use of nuclear weapons if a decision is made to resort to such drastic measures. The various aspects of the tactical use of nuclear weapons being tested during this exercise include delivering pressurization to troops, unlocking warheads, entering flight data, and targeting. Basically, everything involved in an actual nuclear strike, he says. The drills are essentially meant to ensure that the Russian armed forces would be ready to launch a tactical nuclear strike against a NATO military unit if the latter were to deploy to the Ukrainian conflict zone to attack Russian troops there. Korochenko claims. This is a response mechanism in case NATO goes to war with Russia. We don't have to text anyone. We don't need to redraw red lines that have already lost their value. We must be prepared for full-scale military action that includes the use of tactical nuclear weapons. He continues, such drills must be conducted regularly and without warning, and Russian troops should be ready for action if a decision is made to use them. Next article, guys, it just keeps playing out. I'm just trying to breeze through them here, but I want you to see that this is all in the last 30, 40 days. This has all been transpiring and building up to the point where it is right now. And you're not hearing about any of this stuff on the news, guys. You're not seeing it on social media. It's being kept from you. Next article. Putin's landmark decision hit American bases and NATO targets around the world. Russia's passive attitude is over. 900 U.S. bases targeted. Medvedev, we will hit our common enemies. They're not these are fighting words, guys. And they're not fighting with clubs and arrows. They're fighting with weapons that can annihilate a whole city in a few seconds. For 3.5 hours, the president of Russia, Putin, informed international media correspondents about Moscow's change of attitude towards the USA and NATO. Russia will now arm all U.S. NATO enemies to strike U.S. military bases and targets around the world in an application of the enemy of my enemy is my friend doctrine. Characteristic of the criticality of the announcement, the likes of which has never existed before, is the fact that the American journalists seemed extremely anxious upon hearing the news. In the Kremlin, they say, we hope the West got Putin's message. State Duma member Leonid Slutsky added that Russia's patience is certainly long, but it is not unlimited. Russia can deliver long-range weapons to regions of the world, which will be followed by sensitive attacks on states that supply Ukraine with weapons. Putin made this announcement on June 5th in St. Petersburg at a meeting at the Lakhta Center with journalists and heads of the world's leading news agencies. So he made this announcement, guys, to all the news agencies, all the press, letting them know we're not tiptoeing. We're not taking a soft approach to things. We've been more than patient. We've been more than slow in our responses, allowing time, allowing things to play out. They have now upped the ante, and they are threatening American bases around the world with nuclear weapons, guys. Right now, this just happened. June 5th. Okay. Today is July 7th. They're already a month ahead of the announcement. You don't think these guys have drawn plans up already? They haven't already made arrangements for the attacks that's going to take place? And certainly NATO has on the other side. Guys, this is playing out every day right under our noses. I'm going to keep going. I saw this article already. Ukraine hit the radar of Russia's nuclear early warning system. The attack justifies use of nukes. I'm going to go past this because we already read that. Another one, NATO blinds command and control systems of Russian nuclear forces. Kiev bombs strategic radars. Yeah, we read that. Lavrov. This was very end of May. Russia will interpret arrival of F-16s in Ukraine as nuclear sphere. What does that mean? Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, made a shocking announcement this morning. Moscow will perceive the sending of F-16 aircraft to Ukraine as a deliberate signal from NATO in the nuclear sphere. As many readers are aware, several NATO countries are in the process of donating F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. Those and other countries have been training Ukrainian pilots to fly those aircraft. It's been going on for 6 months. What most readers do not know is there's a version of the F-16 that is specifically nuclear capable. And when discussions within NATO began about supplying these F-16s, the United States demanded that only the nuclear capable versions be donated. There have been many fits and starts during the training program, with a number of flight instructors saying the Ukrainian pilots simply cannot master the aircraft because of the language difference. Their years of training and every muscle memory are all geared toward those MiG and Sukhoi aircraft. And they're having a terrible trouble trying to adapt to the English language. So that's probably what's been holding up their arrival. But that's what's coming. That's what's coming, guys. And Lavrov just said if you're sending these to Ukraine, we're looking at them as delivery packages, the delivery weapons to deliver nuclear attacks upon our country, and they're going to attack them as such. They're not just going to hit nuclear. I mean, they're not just going to hit Russia with missiles and arrows and rocks. Okay, they're looking at them like these things are literally coming into Ukraine to destroy us, and they're not going to take it. They're going to look at it at the harshest terms. Medvedev again warns NATO: stop what you're doing, or nuclear consequences. May 31st. The deputy chairman of the Federal Russian Federation Council, Dmitry Medvedev, tried desperately again today to warn the U.S. and NATO of nuclear consequences if they continue on the path they are on against Russia. On social media, he wrote the following: Western countries that allegedly approve the use of their extended range weapons on Russian territory must clearly understand the following. All their military equipment and specialists fighting against us will be destroyed both on the territory of the former Ukraine and other countries if attacks are launched from there against the territory of Russia. Number two, Russia proceeds from the assumption that all long-range strike systems used by the former Ukraine are already directly operated by NATO military personnel. This is not military assistance, but participation in the war against us. Such actions can very well become a casus belli. 3. NATO will have to decide how to classify the consequences of possible retaliatory strikes on the equipment, objects, military personnel of individual member countries in the context of Articles 4 and 5 of the Washington Treaty. In all likelihood, the NATO leadership wants to pretend that we are talking about sovereign decisions of individual countries of the North Atlantic Alliance to support the Kiev regime, and there's no reason to apply the rule that the 1949 Treaty on Collective Self-Defense here. These are dangerous and harmful misconceptions. Such individual assistance from NATO countries against Russia, be it controlling their long-range cruise missiles or sending a contingent of troops to Ukraine, is a serious escalation of the conflict. The former Ukraine and its NATO allies will receive a response of such destructive force that the alliance itself simply will not be able to resist being drawn into the conflict. And no matter how much retired NATO farts chatter that Russia will never use non-strategic nuclear weapons against us in Ukraine, and even more so in individual countries, life is much worse than their frivolous reasoning. A few years ago, they insisted that Russia would not enter into an open military conflict in the Bandera regime so as not to quarrel with the rest. They miscalculated. There's a war going on. The use of tactical nuclear weapons can also be miscalculated, although this would be a fatal mistake. After all, as the president of Russia rightly noted, European countries have a very high population density. And for those enemy countries whose lands are further than the coverage area of tactical nuclear weapons, there is finally a strategic potential. And this, alas, is not intimidation or a nuclear bluff. The current military conflict with the West is developing according to the worst possible scenario, he says. There's constant escalation in the power of applicable NATO weapons. Therefore, today, no one can rule out the transition of the conflict to its final stage. This is the top. There's Putin and then this guy. He was already president before, Medvedev. Okay, now he's sitting at the top of the chain, just under Putin. Everything he's saying, I guarantee you, is approved at the highest levels of the Russian officials. And what he's saying is very clear here, guys. There's no bluffing. Keep poking this bear, and you are going to get obliterated. And they're telling you, they're warning, they're warning, they're warning, they're warning. Stop doing it. They've been warning and warning. And just like the president of Serbia said, there's no one talks peace. No one's even trying to attempt it. It's almost like it's a forbidden word. And no one is taking into consideration the millions. I mean, he said 1, 2, 5, 10 million people. Those are small estimates. That's how many people live in some of the biggest cities in America that may potentially have a target on them. And you're talking many cities being targeted. If it gets down to the point where it's Russia's all out survival or ours, and how far away are we from that? This is unfolding way too fast, guys, and it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming to me. It's overwhelming to anyone who has eyes and ears to hear and see what's going on behind the scenes. And it's a heavy burden. And I just want Americans and people around the world to know, if you're not hearing it from anywhere else, you can come here to this podcast with the little time that we have left and get information that no one wants you to hear and no one wants you to know. This is not misinformation. This is not disinformation. This is not propaganda. I have nothing but support for my home country. I love our country, but I am very, 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 very concerned for the state of our country. And to me, I feel like we're trapped. And there's no one that's going to stop this war from taking out our country. There's no one that's going to step in the way. I feel like God's been holding it back for many, many, many years. But what happens? What happens to a country when they turn away from the Lord? What happens from a country when they live in absolute, objective, corrupted sin? What happens to a country that serves idols and serves Baal and does terrible, wicked things on every single level of society and teaches other countries to do the same? God doesn't change. He's allowed Israel in the Bible to be completely obliterated. He's allowed Jerusalem to be destroyed multiple times. He's allowed the children of Israel to be taken away and put into slavery multiple times, oppression multiple times by their enemies because they turned away from the Lord. Lord, have mercy on us. Next article. I'm just going to go through a few more here, guys. U.S. changes doctrine. This is War News 24/7. U.S. changes doctrine. So now Russia's changed its doctrine. Now U.S. is changing this doctrine now, okay? Flirting with the idea. Hold on, I got to sneeze. Okay, maybe not. U.S. changes doctrine. Flirting with the idea of a limited nuclear conflict with Russia and China. U.S. is now loading the Virginia-class submarines with nuclear missiles. Washington is considering deploying nuclear-armed cruise missiles on Virginia-class attack submarines to deter China and Russia, according to the Asia Times. Sputnik comments on the matter. U.S. lawmakers have recently focused on how to modify the Virginia class attack submarines to install nuclear launched cruise missiles. Last week, they invited Vice Admiral Johnny Wolf to discuss the complexities and uncertainties of arming attack submarines with the SLCM N. The discussion revolved around strengthening their nuclear deterrent against China and Russia, according to the Asian Times. The SLCM N is a low yield nuclear warhead cruise missile launched from surface ships or attack submarines. Next article. Report details, and this is June 4th. Report details U.S. troop land corridors, an event of European ground war with Russia. So, guys, U.S. troops, NATO has a plan in place for rapid deployment of its forces in the scenario of a future Russian attack on Europe. It includes the development of land corridors, which could be used to rush some 300,000 troops, mostly American soldiers, to frontline positions in order to defend against a Russia invasion. So, NATO, meaning the U.S., already has plans in place to commit hundreds of thousands of our troops into Europe to fight against Russia in case of a land invasion. And they've already mapped out the land corridors and how they're going to get there. Lieutenant General Alexander Stolfrank, sorry, Chief of NATO's Joint Support and Enabling Command, described the UK publication. Huge logistics bases, as we know them from Afghanistan and Iraq, are no longer possible because they will be attacked and destroyed early on in a conflict situation. Logistics and troop transport corridors would originate in places like Greece, Italy, Turkey, and the Netherlands, Norway, and the port of Rotterdam, a key northern European hub, and is specifically named. Lines like the Germany-Poland Railway are also mentioned in the report, all of which would theoretically allow rapid deployment of U.S. forces to any NATO territory being threatened. Separate reports in the UK media have been warning that the West should prepare for war with Russia at some point in the next 2 decades, connecting with ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Now that Russian President Vladimir Putin has secured his historic 5th term in office, it is patently clear that he will devote his next 6-year spell at the Kremlin to pursuing his paranoid, this is quote, his paranoid obsession of confronting the West. This is a quote here. As for Telegraph's latest Tuesday revelation of the NATO land corridors, with the somewhat loud and sensational headline of NATO land corridors could rush U.S. troops to frontline in event of European war, the reality is that big picture contingency plans like this have been on U.S. and NATO planners' shelves since the Cold War, but they're getting dusted off as continued escalation of the Ukraine proxy war. And just shows a picture here, if you guys are reading the audio, of ways that has a picture of Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, Netherlands, Norway, Turkey, Greece, Italy have arrows pointing to how U.S. troops could get to the whole western front of the border there with Russia to be able to fight. So that's what's in this article here. Moving forward, American HIMARS, this is War News 24/7. American HIMARS hit Russian territory for the first time. Video of damaged air defense system in Belgorod. So now America's HIMARS are being launched inside Russian territory. Days after the U.S. gave Kiev the green light to use U.S. weapons for strikes on Russian soil, Ukrainian HIMARS appears to have targeted Russian army positions in Belgorod with ATACMS missiles. So we're arming Ukraine, and they are now hitting inside Russian territory. So at first they were like, we're just arming Ukraine so they can fight this war on Ukrainian soil. This will not be used directly on Russia's soil. Biden gave his promise that it's not what this is for. We've not given any kind of permission. Well, that has been taken away. They have now been given the full green light to use all their U.S. weapons and any weapons that have been given to Ukraine in Russian soil against Russian civilians and military bases. We don't know. I mean, how do we know all the places? We're getting these articles from sources that are seeing and taking account of these attacks as they happen, but I'm sure they're not getting all of the attacks. Just more that are probably happening that are just not even getting noticed or not getting reported. We're just lucky to catch the ones that are getting reported. According to Kiev Post, Russian officials confirmed the attacks over the weekend, and major Russian media outlets identified the weapons used as M42 missiles fired from the M270 and HIMARS systems. The Russian side said all the missiles fired from Ukraine were successfully shot down while claiming they were targeting civilian areas. Ukraine and Russian Telegram accounts have reported destruction of ammunition depots and other heavy weaponry of the Russian military stationed near the border with Ukraine, but there has been no confirmation from either side. Next article. Germany requests to activate 900,000 reserves. Closer and closer to Great War. So here comes the conscription, guys. I think we're up to 8 countries now that have updated their draft laws and have started conscription, meaning they're going to draft our sons and daughters. And in America, I'll get to this I'll talk about it even now. A law was just recently submitted in the House of Representatives to allow not a selective service draft where our children can volunteer to enter into the draft. They're now automatically added to the draft. We have no choice in the matter. And if they call upon our sons, and the article also says that women can also be drafted. They may not be drafted to the front lines, but they can equally be drafted. And we're talking ages 18 to 26, automatically being added right now. That was added to, I think, the National Defense Authorization Act last month or in May, but I think it was last month. And it included men and women 18 years to 26 years, where it was being sent to the rest of the government to debate and to sign by Biden. So we're country after country after country in NATO. Russia's already in conscription. Ukraine, they've already lost hundreds of thousands of their own sons and daughters in this war from conscription. They've ran out. So here we go. 900,000 in Germany just got activated, or the request came forward to be activated. Just another article. Germany updates wartime measures, draft laws reactivated. Citizens can be drafted at any time. Evacuation of citizens and food rationing. Makeshift bunkers and prepare hospitals. Emergency food reserves to be stored secretly. Job bans in key sectors. NATO troop movements, facilitating the rapid movement of NATO troops through Germany to the Eastern Front. Civilian roles for healthcare professionals, doctors, psychologists, nurses, vets, purportedly for military and civil service. Priority repairs for military equipment, quick repair and maintenance of military gear, increased defense budget commitments to NATO. All right, here we go, guys. We're coming towards the back half before we get into some prophetic words that I want to bring forth and tie in everything. Official statement, War News 24/7. China will help Russia militarily if attacked by the West. Now, this is major news here, okay? Because there's no way that China can get involved equally standing with Russia and America and all of NATO sweat bullets, okay? Because you're talking Russia and China together. Okay, have a big military, a bigger military than I would say all of NATO combined. Just in those two. Number two, both of their nuclear arsenals, and all it takes is one. But China is committing full force, and they're saying right now that if Russia is militarily attacked by the West, China is going to step in and help. Article starts, the Chinese armed forces are ready to cooperate with the Russian military to fully implement the important consensus reached by the heads of state. The military personnel of the People's Liberation Army are ready, together with their Russian colleagues, to defend international justice and impartiality, and also make every effort to ensure international and regional security. Next article, U.S. deploys NATO forces around China in unprecedented mobilization and joining forces with AUKUS skirmish rehearsal with the PLA. For the first time, a comprehensive rehearsal of the conflict with China. So NATO is now practicing and rehearsing for war with China. In and around China, as we speak, the U.S., here's the article, the U.S. is moving NATO air forces out of China in an unprecedented move that prepares France, Germany, Britain, and Spain for involvement in the Asia Pacific region. The massive mobilization lasting 2 months with many individual elements of interconnection of all the countries of the region shows that the U.S. has worked out and has ready a scenario for NATO involvement in Asia and the Pacific. It is a combination of NATO and AUKUS forces against China. It is obvious that China is now officially viewed as an enemy of the West. Quote, it has no coincidence that the U.S. ambassador to Beijing, Nicholas Burns, for the first time explicitly stated that China has effectively sided with Russia in the conflict in Ukraine. According to the American diplomat, China has taken Russia's side in the Ukrainian conflict. Burns noted that it makes no sense to talk about China's neutrality, while adding that China transfers to Russia technologies and materials used in the Russia defense industry. And here's the latest one. Yesterday, guys, July 6th, 2024. Breaking news. China sends PLA troops to Belarus. Message to NATO. So here we go, guys. In a stunning development in Eastern Europe, China has sent troops from its People Liberation Army to Belarus to participate side by side with Belarusian troops in an exercise as NATO places 115,000 troops on Belarus's border. Word of this began to leak out around 5 a.m. Eastern U.S. time today, Saturday, July 6th, when avid air enthusiasts noticed an unidentified plane in Belarusian airspace. It had begun squawking a transponder beacon, but it was not identifying itself. At a military base in Belarus, and covert intel was quickly deployed to take a look as this military plane landed. It turned out to be unnecessary because both Belarus and Russia made public the details. The aircraft was a troop transport cargo plane from China's People Liberation Army. Those that landed were a small contingent of Chinese army troops deplaned and were greeted with a hearty welcome by Belarus military officers. It turns out that this is not a subtle at all message to NATO. China backs Belarus and Russia, period. It also turns out that this proves interoperability between those forces, something that was not heretofore confirmed by the West. NATO has positioned about 115,000 troops on the border with Belarus, hoping to force Russia to lock in place about 300,000 troops it has on the border of Ukraine. But now that China has made its entry into the situation, Russia is now free to utilize those 300,000 troops along Ukrainian's border without having to worry that NATO will enter Belarus. This is huge, guys. And it continues. It says this is a very big change in the balance of power in Eastern Europe. It seems designed to give pause to NATO and to the West. Observers say it will either achieve that goal or perhaps trigger a much worse set of actions by the West. This is now a tinderbox ready to be ignited by the smallest spark. So the fact that Chinese PLA troops are in Belarus and NATO troops, 115,000 of them, are on the other side on the border changes everything, guys. It just makes everything much more difficult, okay? Because what China is basically saying is if NATO attacks Belarus, if NATO attacks Russia, Chinese troops are there to help defend Russia and Belarus against NATO. And if Chinese soldiers are killed in this attack by NATO, it would trigger China to be fully involved in this war. It won't just be Russia, guys. It will be the whole of China. And that would just trigger even more because not only can China send troops to Russia and send troops to Belarus, but that opens the door even more for China to say, okay, well, we're just going to attack Taiwan now and take it for ourselves and stretch you guys even more thin. Because I don't care how big NATO is, it cannot defend Ukraine, all of Europe, and Taiwan, and North and South Korea, and its own borders at the same time. It's impossible, guys. It can't happen. At some point, it's going to break down. And we are getting to a point where it's never been more dangerous than right now, guys. It's never been more dangerous. It's so heavy on me. It's so heavy. The weight of what is coming down right now in the world, the state of the world, and the state of this nation. And all of this has been, the Lord has been very clear. He's shown prophetically these things are going to take place. And I've been consistent in giving you guys prophetic words, showing you in the Bible, and also giving you prophetic words, actually showing you before it would happen that these things would happen. And there's still things that have yet to happen that have been prophesied, including what's going to happen in America. And I'm going to share some of these with you now. Okay. There's two different prophecies I'm going to read. Terry Bennett, another prophetic mighty man of God who's been shown various prophecies about the end times and about America itself. He's an American pastor. Phillip Barnett is also an American pastor. But what makes Phillip Barnett very interesting is that he ended up becoming a pastor in Ukraine, was over there for many, many years with his family. And while he was over there, he was given a dream in, I think, 1997 that detailed everything that's happening right now. But it went even further and showed the whole launch of World War III and how it would take place. In certain parts of the world were involved, certain cities in America that were involved. He didn't write down the dream, forgot about it. God gave it to him like 10 years later, I believe. And he, with even greater detail, and he wrote it down this time. And he goes into some detail, and that's called the Azov Mina or Azov Mina prophecy. And I'm going to go over that. And there's actually two Azov Mina prophecies. I don't have both of them. I'm just going to go over the first one, but there's a second one. And the Azov 2 prophecy goes into the tribulation past World War III and the fight of Antichrist against the armies of God. And it's extremely profound. You can also look it up on YouTube as well. But let's go into the first prophecy here. And this is the Zoffman prophecy, September 22, Pastor Phillip Barnett. An American pastor, Phillip Barnett, started churches in Ukraine. He had a very long dream in 1999. Excuse me, I thought it was 97. In 99, that repeated in 2007, followed by 4 visions. The Lord told him to go to the window where he saw bumper to bumper traffic exiting Kiev and going southwest. The vision was formed out of clouds on what was other a clear sky. He was told there would be 2 evacuations of Kiev. The first, when the Russian army invades Ukraine, which happened. That's already happened. The second, just before nuclear war begins between Russia and America. God said anyone left behind in the second evacuation will die in a nuclear holocaust because a nuclear missile would hit Kiev. During the 4 visions, the Lord spoke to him for 17 hours from midnight to 11 a.m. the next day. These visions explained the repeated dream he had, but in much greater detail. He made 13 videos and they all went viral on social media throughout Ukraine. He and his family were threatened night and day. Imagine an American pastor prophesying that America was going to attack Ukraine and Russia with atomic weapons. The word refers to the word written on the palace walls of King Belshazzar in Daniel 5:26. Your kingdom has been judged and found wanting. He put it all away, but 8 years later, Russia invaded Crimea, and he was contacted by people all over the world about his dreams and visions. In part of his original dream, he was traveling in a bus through central Ukraine when he saw 8 mountains in the shape of ICBMs, missiles, but much taller. He asked a woman on the bus what these mountains are called, and she said, Azovmina. The Lord told Philip all of eastern Ukraine. Listen, guys, the Lord told Philip all of eastern Ukraine from the Dnieper River to the Russian border would be destroyed by 7 nuclear bombs from the U.S. 7, guys. Also, Moscow and parts of central and eastern Russia and the Caucasus would be destroyed. There would be safe zones for those left behind all around the world, including the U.S. for those who hear God's voice and repent. Philip has made a major effort to help Jews evacuate to Western Ukraine and Israel. This post has a major paraphrase from a 2-hour interview. And right here, if you're watching the video, it shows the YouTube link. But if you just search Phillip Barnett, Phillip, and then Barnett, Barnett, and then Azovmina, Azovmena. Guys, it's everywhere. You'll see it and listen to it. And I'm going to show you some of the things that he saw. All right. These are cities that he saw that were attacked in America. He said the very first city he saw that was hit by missile, okay, the big mushroom making cloud missile, was Chicago. Right here's a picture of it from the video. The next one he said was Detroit. The third one he said was right here, Cleveland, which is crazy. He said he saw Memphis hit, and then he said he saw Nashville, Tennessee hit. There's 2 places in Tennessee right now, guys. Any of my Tennesseans who are listening to this, we need to be very, 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 very concerned. This is playing out before our very eyes. He said he saw New Orleans hit. He saw Little Rock, Arkansas hit. I'm showing pictures on the slides if you guys are just listening to the audio. Denver, Albuquerque, New Mexico. He said he saw 3 hit New York. And he said he saw 1 in Boston. He said he saw 1 in Baltimore and 2 in D.C. Those are the cities, guys. Those were the cities that he saw that were attacked by Russia as a counteroffense or a first strike, whatever you want to call it, in this World War III that has yet to take place. This is very, very serious, guys, okay? I can't even begin to tell you. You need to listen. You need to take heed. You need to take heed. Okay? God confirms what he's going to do before it happens. He does nothing without revealing the secrets to his prophets. And in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let a thing be established. Correct? Right here, Terry Bennett. First seal has been broken. On April 2nd, I'm going to read this from Terry Bennett. The angel Gabriel appeared to him and said in real time, Revelation chapter 5, he said, is occurring. When Gabriel said this, Terry saw a vision of this happening on October 5th, 8:45 a.m. Gabriel appears in my presence. He blows a shofar and declares it is time. The first seal has been broken. Terry saw a rider on a white horse going forth. Then the Lord said, nations have been weighed in the balance and found lacking. Gabriel says Europe will be strengthened, Russia will be weakened, America will be weakened. The Asian nations will form an alliance and be strengthened. Watch Israel. Great turmoil will hit Israel and Russia. What begins in peace will end in utter destruction. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. While people are saying there's peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them as labor pains come upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. Let's discuss United States of America, he says. There are states you are not wanting to be in. If the Lord has been speaking to you about getting out of that state, now is your moment before it is too late. The red horse is coming. The first four seals will be broken in fairly quickly succession. Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. Now, this is before the war broke out. The Lord showed him this years ago. Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. To control it is to control Europe. Hitler did it and the Kaiser before him. Trouble is brewing and things are not getting better. Gabriel said on October 5th, this is the end of God's beginning. This is now beginning of the end. Breaking of the first seal. The Lord says, if there are cities of refuge, there are cities of destruction. And he listed what Gabriel told him were 13 cities of destruction and then 2 cities of judgment. These are the 13 cities, guys, that the Lord showed him. Let's see if there's any common cities that were shown to Pastor Phillip Barnett and other ones we didn't know about. First one, Miami, Florida. Second one, New York. Third one, Boston. Fourth one, Chicago. Fifth one, St. Louis. Sixth one, Memphis, Tennessee. Seventh one, New Orleans. Eighth, Madison, Wisconsin. 9, Seattle, Washington. 10, Portland, Oregon. 11, San Francisco. 12, Los Angeles. 13, Washington, D.C. 2 cities of judgment, Nashville, Tennessee, and Atlanta, Georgia. So out of these 13, there's what, 9? 9, maybe 10 cities that were the same cities that the Lord showed Pastor Phillip Barnett. This isn't including, guys, other cities that have been shown to other prophetic mighty men and women of God. If I were to compare all those cities, it just would confirm even more. But here's 2 out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. And we'll go into more on other podcasts where we talk about cities of refuge, where there'll be safe zones. The Lord's already revealing these things. He's showing us. And if the Lord's been speaking to you about a city that you're living in, or if you're living in any one of these cities, guys, the time is now to sit at the feet of Jesus and seek his face on everything concerning this. Test everything that's being told to you. Pray and take it to the Lord in prayer. If you feel the Holy Spirit is confirming it, test it. Do not take my words for it. Don't even take their words for it. Listen to the Lord Jesus Christ. Listen to Father God. Take everything before him in prayer. Ask for confirmation. And if you are getting the confirmation, if you are hearing the confirmation, then this is absolutely positively something you need to take very careful consideration of and ask the Lord what he wants you to do. This is not the time to ignore what you're hearing. This is not the time to quickly dismiss it because it means you have to stop living your comfortable life and pretend like nothing's happening. You cannot crawl out of this. You cannot escape it. Everything that we know, guys, is going to very soon cease to exist. This country is going to be turned upside down. And every day draws closer to the reckoning. You need to get your hearts right with the Lord, guys. What do I do? Well, I'm telling you, number one, you need to pray. You need to repent. You need to ask the Lord into your heart. You need to surrender your will to Him. You need to read His word and do what it says every single day. Make Him Lord of your life. With Him, you can do all things, guys. With the Lord, even in death, you found victory because He conquered victory 2,000 years ago. Jesus conquered victory 2,000 years ago. And as long as you stay close to Him, He will take care of you, even in death. When these things come upon this country, everyone is no one's ready for that. No one's prepared. Even as the Lord has been showing me and revealing these things to me and to His prophets, it doesn't make it any easier accepting that it's going to happen tomorrow or it's going to happen the next day. Because when it does, it's worse than what you even think. I mean, can you just imagine one of these mushroom making cloud things goes off? It changes the whole world, guys. And that's anywhere in the world. What about all these cities here that I just read off? How many millions of people are that? And they're all being put at risk by what's happening right now in this war. And nobody is seeking peace. Nobody is trying to stop it. And what the Lord is very clearly saying here, even if you do try to stop it and there's a small peace and safety, it doesn't mean nothing. Because right in the middle of that peace and safety is when everything is going to go upside down. You got to pray, repent, forgive those who have trespassed against you. Love your brothers, love your sisters. Love the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Read the word of God and just try to do what it says every day. Number two, prepare for tough times. If martial law was declared or any of these things happen tomorrow, how long could you survive with the supplies you have right now in your home? You need to start saving up, guys. Save up on water, dry food. Do you have an alternative energy source? Solar generator, any kind of generator, but preferably so. Do you have any home defense set aside? Can you defend yourself? Can you defend your family if it comes down to it? Do you have any cash on hand? Do you have precious metals that you can barter with in the interim? When this takes place, you're not going to be able to go to the ATM and pull money out, guys. You're talking any of those mushroom cloud making things go off over our country, our grid is gone, guys. Our grid is gone. That EMP effect will knock out the grid everywhere. There's no more phones, there's no more electronics unless you've prepared. Okay. Do you have Faraday bags that you can put certain electronics in? You can put a ham radio in. Do you have a short wave radio of any kind? Any other alternative way to communicate? Satellite phones, walkie talkies you can keep with your family members, CB radios. You need at least 3 to 6 months of supplies per family member. They say the bare minimum is 2 weeks, but you're going to need more than 2 weeks. If you haven't started yet, get to just 2 weeks of food. And you're talking 2 or 3 meals a day. Do you have enough water on hand? Because the grid goes down, the water pumps aren't going to be working. You need to fill up your bathtub immediately with as much water as you can put in it. Fill up your sinks with water, as much water as you can put in it. And the moment the pumps start pumping, that's it, guys. There's no more water coming out of your faucets. Do you have water on hand? Do you have a water filter Berkey water filters and such? Do you have anything that could help you and your family survive in these moments? Number four, do you have an alternative place that you can get away from that's far from the city where you can build a community with others and work together to grow food and protect each other? Something you need to keep in mind, guys. Some place that you can go. It's not going to be in the middle of everybody because everyone's going to be desperate. You take away power, take away food, you take away everything, and martial law is declared. People are not going to sit at home for long. They need to eat. They need to survive, and there's nothing that's going to stop the violence and the trauma that could take place as people are doing whatever they got to do to try to survive. Guys, you gotta pray about this. You gotta seek God about this, and you gotta prepare yourself. Final thing, and I say it here, it's hard to not panic, right? It's hard to not listen to all this and just not want to crawl up in a corner and suck your thumb and go away and disappear. It's hard truth to listen to. This is hard news to accept. I get it. But while you still can work, while you still have a job, okay, you need to work and do everything you possibly can to get yourself ready and your family ready for this. Stay focused. Keep pursuing the things that you need to do and work and pay your bills. Okay, don't stop doing those things, but you need to can reconsider your 20-year retirement plan. Okay, and think about. And I'm not giving you financial advice, but I'm just saying you need to 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 rethink and reconsider the times that we're living in and how best you need to prepare and get you and your family ready for tough times. Just be aware and prepare your heart for these things. Keep pursuing your dreams and passions. We're not giving up on our hopes and dreams, but they're definitely going to be redirected. Okay. If you're trying to get a Grammy in 5 years, I'm not telling you that's not possible. All right. But let's just pray we can make it through tomorrow. And if your dreams or passions are music or whatever business that you're in that you want to do, I'm not telling you to lay everything down. I'm telling you to seek the Lord and do what he tells you to do and get into union with him and submit everything over to him and let him tell you how to direct your life. Tomorrow isn't promised, guys. God's judgments are coming to America. He is not delaying anymore. He is not um, reconsidering. He has warned and warned and warned and warned and warned through many of his prophets over many, many years and in his word. This is the time, guys. The time is now. You have to stay close to him and trust that he's going to protect you in the days to come. That's my prayer for all of you. This is Trapped in the US podcast. Follow us on IG at Trapped in the US. Follow us on Facebook at Trapped in the US, on YouTube at Trapped in the US, on Rumble at Trapped in the US. And again, guys, follow us at Patreon at Trapped in the US podcast. Support our channel. Support us. Help us to continue to get this podcast out to the world. We're so appreciative of your time today. God bless every single one of you. Until the next time, talk to you soon.